past year, I spent 6 months at Oxford University, and the research that I was doing was on how we report on sexual violence in Bangladesh. So I looked at 4 major newspapers in the country at around 250 reports, and I just looked at the different ways that we as journalists represent women who are victims or survivors of violence in the media. So it's a difficult topic. It was, there were a lot of good findings. For example, I found that people really don't use victim blaming language in the same way anymore, which was positive. But sadly, there were negatives. And the one that really stood out to me was the fact that women themselves were absent from the reports. So we are talking about reports about violence against women, but almost all the sources were male police, male lawyers, male family members of the victim, and very few women who we consider to be experts. So women from organizations who work with gender justice and who work with women's rights. These people were not present in the reports in the same way. I think less than 20% of the reports had female voices in them. So I just want to clarify that I'm not saying that only women can write about women's issues. That's not the case at all. Obviously, all sorts of voices should be there. But when you are talking about a topic that is so relevant for women, that is about women, it is shocking that half the population is just absent from it, So it's not really saying that only women can talk about this, but there is a real lack of diversity. And ultimately, this is not just bad for equality, but it's also bad for journalism, right? Because half the story is not being told. We still have this idea in media that, when women write about women's issues, it's going to be like more, fun, more silly, more to do with like fashion and makeup. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we will talk about these topics. But at the same time, I think we have to really clarify that I would love to write more positive pieces, but when I'm writing about women, I'm writing about domestic violence, I'm writing about child marriage, I'm writing about trafficking, I'm writing about the fact that women still don't have equal inheritance according to any of our laws. These are the things that affect women in Bangladesh every day, and you really have to fight, to convince editors and managers and even readers that these things are worth writing about. So that's one thing that happens. But then also the other end of that spectrum is that if you're a woman and you're always writing about women's issues, people think you're not capable of writing about anything else. So it's like, oh, that's your beat. You don't have to write about politics. You don't have to write about sports. The thing is, I am a really big cricket fan. And I don't know if you've kept up with this, but like the Bangladeshi women's cricket team has been doing very well lately. They won
the football team.
Yeah, and the football team. So the Bangladesh women's team has actually won the Asia Cup. The men's never has. The football team obviously won the South Asian, the Football Federation. And like every time I want to write about sports, there is always like, even in my own head, there's a voice going like, are you qualified? Do you know enough to write about this? But then when I read like other male sports journalists writing about it, I was like, I could have said this exact same thing.
Or I could have done it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I feel like there are definitely these obstacles that are still there, but things have gotten a lot better. And in my personal experience, I've been really, really blessed to have a female editor, like a female manager. And it makes all the difference to have women in positions where they're able to support other women. And
I think, talking about challenges, I felt that one of the biggest challenges that I had, obviously getting to my career, going through studying and then getting to what I wanted to do, because I started a bit later in the media. Obviously that was a huge challenge because I didn't have the right expertise or experience. But I had passion and I had belief. So I got to where I really wanted to, which was to work at the BBC. And to work for the BBC Asian Network on radio is what I really ever wanted to do. But recently I found that although I've done radio for 10 years on the BBC, trying to find that transition, because I feel like, I'm a broadcaster, I do news, I do entertainment, I do TV, I do radio. But actually, when I wanted to do some news pieces, some news journalism, which I feel like I do have with all my education, my studies, etc., I felt like I can do it. But actually, it was really hard to get into, right? Because it's what you said, you get boxed in. I think as a female, you get boxed in. Either you get boxed in because, oh, she's an entertainment presenter. Oh, she's an actress. Oh, she's a model. She can't do this. But yeah, I feel like we do have to face that, where we have to kind of prove that extra little bit more. Like, yeah, I can do this actually. Let me show you. And I've done that previously. And obviously recently I've been really lucky to be a reporter on the BBC on news, and I've been able to give some news stories about British Bangladeshis. But I do feel that in this day and age, you still, as a woman, have to prove yourself that little bit more than a man would have to. Rana Plaza. কয়েক বছর আগে যে রানা প্লাজায় যে ফায়ার হয়েছিল, it was a really sad time, অনেক sad time, এবং এটা নিয়ে কিন্তু অনেক বছর ধরে কথা চলে। এখন পর্যন্ত এটা নিয়ে কথা চলছে। এখন পর্যন্ত আমরা গার্মেন্টস ওয়ার্কার্স নিয়ে কথা বলছি, they're not getting paid properly, there's no equality, etc., etc. That's a separate issue. Eta I totally agree, and that's being taken care of. Etar ব্যাপারে অনেক কথা চলছে, and debates চলছে. But we also need to look at the other side, and that's why I'm here in Bangladesh, because I want to show the other side as well. Yes, there are issues going on, kintu let's look on the flip side. A garments workers jara আছে এখানে, তাদের তো at least একটা কাজ হচ্ছে, they're working, and I wanted to go and visit them. So আমি গাজীপুরে যে কয়েকদিন আগে আমার টিমকে নিয়ে আমরা ইন্টারভিউ নিয়েছি এবং দেখেছি যে মানে তাদের কেমন, how they study, how they're working, what the conditions are. And actually it was really nice to see them because they were working and we were talking to them. তাদের সাথে আমরা কথা বলেছিলাম এবং we realized that they are also getting trained in mental health. That is a huge thing. And I don't know if you ever knew this, but some of the garments factories now have a policy in place for these garments workers, for these women, to actually have a counselor so that they, Bangladesh, and these garment workers, these factories, they can have the right support, right help for their mental health. And that's amazing to know that somewhere like Bangladesh, they're thinking about mental health. We are still struggling in the UK with South Asians to talk about mental health. But Bangladesh, they've already started it. And they've started it in the garments factory, which is amazing. They've started training, they've started educating, they've said how important it is.